So basically, the law say if you have a pension fund, if you work in a private, you contribute to Social Security, right? And then you join the county, become a worker later, you have a pension fund, and then you get penalized on your Social Security. You no longer get as much as what you're supposed to earn. They say you have a pension fund, right? So that's unfair. That's unfair. We made the point very clear every time we go to Washington DC and talk about it. The reason is, both part of it, pension and Social Security, you own it. You own it, so you shouldn't be deducted. And then when people join the county, become a county worker, pension fund is based on the year of service, right? Yeah. You don't provide them with years of service. Your pension fund is not as much as people that have worked a long time. So you need money for both part of it. So that's why we strongly believe that was not a fair act, and we need to remove it. So that's what it's about.
Thank you. Us and actually benefits us, and also like a retirement, pre-retirement, when you're looking into, what are the things that you need to have in place to make sure that you can, retire comfortably, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's very important. So LACAAEA always have events here and there about retirement preparation. I do recommend you, don't wait until you retire. There's always mid-career consultation as well. You can check it out. And then you can also have, when you close your retirement, you really want to plan, you have different events too. So if we want to have an event together, LACAAEA, with all the members of the LA County, as long as we have 25 people or more as a county employee, I can bring LACAAEA staff here, join you and organize the event, provide any question, provide any information needed, answer any question from you. So I'm here to serve you. So let me know, anything can help. Glad to be part of this community.
Again, Kate Panim, I run a nonprofit called Faith and Community Empowerment. And earlier when William mentioned the word advocacy, it was like sweet words to my ears. I've been in this country over 50 years, and what I've seen over and over again is the fact that Asians continue to be excluded and erased. And when we're excluded and erased, we continue to be demonized. And unfortunately, the perception of Asians is that we are privileged, we are racist, and we are weak. That combination makes us very easy targets of being victims of violence and hate crime. And I truly believe, as earlier, we are all God's children. We all have a God-given potential of what we could achieve and contribute. And those who contribute are the ones that are welcome and are invited to the seats of influence. And so for us as an organization, we've been at this for over 23 years. We've had over 1,000 partners from White House to Fortune 500. And I'm very, very grateful for the partnership with LACAAEA. The last 2 years, we partnered together to bring one of our programs, which is homeownership. There is right now a $380,000 difference between homeowners and renters. When you have wealth, that gives you opportunity to pursue education. When you have wealth, you have opportunity to choose and wait for the right job, right? Start a business, blah, 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 right? But unfortunately for Asians, right now, again, because of that perception that Asians are doing well, a lot of the down payment assistance programs that are available are not available to Asians. And so we've been fighting that path. Currently, we could help someone up to $280,000 of down payment assistance. So, wow. And those are for low income, but there are a lot of other generous programs for even middle income, moderate income, and if you're in certain census tracts, you could be rich. So again, there's a lot of different programs. So that's one for which we have fought. I just want to make it one, point and then step down. I'm sure you have a lot of other programs, but banks are regulated just like the county's regulated, and so they are run by something called CRA, Community Investment Act. And one of the things that they're required to do is give back, and they are rolling out something called special purpose credit programs. Okay, it's like billions of dollars. And unfortunately, because Asians are again perceived as minority men, we keep on being excluded. And as the earlier speaker mentioned, when we unite and raise our voices, we could make those changes. And so when PNC Bank came out with a program that they announced $88 billion, we were able to advocate, show them the data points, and they were able to change their policy to include Asians. And I could give many more examples of how we are doing that. And so I look forward to partnering with LACAAEA, and any of you guys that want to volunteer beyond the hours that you put into LACAAEA, and you want to do more, please come to me. We are on many, many fronts, including the Youth at Work, the County Youth at Work program that helps, paid internship for youth 14 through 24. Even though we represent 17% of the county population, only 3% of the participants are Asian. And that is just one example of many places throughout the county where Asians continue to be excluded and erased. So again, if you are interested, please come by and we'll let them know. Thank you.
LACAAEA has been around for over 50 years. We're one of the older generation. We're one of the top 3, I would say, out of like 20-something employee associations, right, in the county. There's Hispanic, there's African Americans, and there's all the different Asian ethnic groups, right? There's Chinese employees and Filipinos and all that, right? But what we try to do is that we try to kind of be an umbrella, right, for all the Asian groups, right? Because the more we're together, the more we have as a bigger group, the more our voices will be heard, right? The needs of our community has to be spoken up to at the decision-making table, right? Things like language access issues, right? They're saying, well, but when budget crisis happens, right? Like, why do we need to translate language materials into Asian languages in outreach team? Why do we need that? We have perfectly great people. We'll, bring in, maybe like temp workers that are Asian speaking or whatever, right, instead. But did you know that the reason why that the county translates materials into Hispanic languages is because they were sued by MELDEF, which is the Mexican American Legal Defense Education Fund or something like that, MELDEF. That was the only reason why. We haven't gotten together to be able to make one voice and say, you must, it's necessary for our survival, our community's survival, and it also creates more jobs for those that speak, an Asian language, right, for us. Even our cultural awareness, they don't understand, why it's important for you to have a face, an Asian face, at the outreach table when we do resource events. We're going out there to do resource events. I go out there for my department, which is Register, Recorder, County Clerk, which we do voting, right? I go out there and I ask my department and I said, why don't you have an Asian person on your outreach team? There isn't one. There isn't one. I'm the one that go out there, not paid, because LACAAEA work is volunteer work, right? We go out there, not paid, right, to do this work, right? And that's why it's so important. If you want job security, if you want to get more Asians in the county, workforce and everything, this is what we're fighting for, language access, things like that, right? So, Will talked about advocacy. That was one of the biggest things when we started working more, not just on the cultural events, right? Because other employee associations, they do their cultural events, they do their Lunar New Year dinners and things like that, right? But what we stand for is advocating for an AAPI community, right? And so we hope, if you aren't a member yet, we hope you can join us. If you don't work for the county, we also have associate membership, which is only $30 a year, right? We have applications back there in that room, and with that, we have swag bags that we, give you, like with our, logos and things like that you can wear proudly, right? So we hope you can join us. For if you're a county employee, it's only like $5 a month payroll deduction. $5 is like cheaper than boba, right? Talking about boba, right? So it's not much, right? All it is just we wanted a commitment from you that you're in this together with us, standing with us. That's all it is. And we hope that you come and just like, you know, talk to us about how you can get more involved, because we have like 400 members, you know, that are not active, but we need more people that are active, because frankly, it's a lot of work, right? It's just only a few of us doing it, right? And the more we have people, more hands to help, the better it is for all of us, right? So we can bring more of these programs and more webinars and, you know, in-person events for everybody. Okay? All right.
Here, thank you everyone for speaking. Nicole, Hayden, Jody. Again, this organization, we do many different things, and we are very happy that you guys are here to support as well. And as Jody mentioned before, you guys can also join and do other things as well to help us. We really appreciate that. And so the other aspect of our association is as much as just giving back to the community. I also believe a lot in education, as I'm sure many of you guys also believe education is very important, coming from an Asian American background and so forth. So my parents pushed me for education, and I am lucky to get a very small amount of loans. I know some other people have a loan to down payment for a house, so I know I'm very lucky for that. But of course, I could have appreciated a scholarship if possible back in my day. So that's why I am a scholarship chair for LACAAEA, because I want to give back, and I do believe education is very important. And as everyone said earlier, you know, I'm not working for the county. The pension is great, and we also hope that you guys will also join the county one day for future students here, or if you guys have outside jobs, you know, county is always open. So for the first scholarship that we have up, so can Miss Lauren Pachia please come up? Oh yes. So the scholarship is actually $1,000 per person. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Is Nell Apostle. You can actually just volunteer for events, because we believe that volunteering is very important, and also just giving back to the community. So thank you, Nell, for helping us last year for our fish. Undergrad. However, she cannot be here today, so Mr. Bowen Chen would accept on her behalf. Next part of the program, for the Chinese American Museum. So Mr. Michael Trump, you can come up. So, him to speak a little bit more about the Chinese American Museum and also about Ms. Anime Wong. And again, as I mentioned, yesterday was actually her birthday, so it's a great time right now to have him here to speak about her. Thank you.
Here. And you know, us as a museum, you know, our history makers is a way where we honor individuals, organizations that really serve for the betterment of the Chinese American community. And you know, LACAAEA is one of those organizations that really was in service for 50 years, advocating for initially Asian Americans and LA County employees, but really broadened into thinking about supporting LA County and beyond, and making sure that folks understand the resources that the county provides, but also utilizes the resources that are given to them. Right? We pay our taxes, these services are for you, and please use them and whatnot, right? So, you know, we here at the museum are very honored to provide you all with our History Makers Award and whatnot. So thank you for attending that. For those who attended the gala, thank you for that. But I'm here on a different capacity, really as the Executive Director of the Chinese American Museum. I've been here at the museum since 2005. So I've been here for like forever. Started as an intern actually, for those who are, you know, into volunteer work right now, or those who are younger. I started as an intern, then became the educator, and then became the executive director in 2019, right before the pandemic, right? The museum here, if you're not familiar with the Chinese American Museum, it's okay, because the first time I always get is, one, this is Chinese American Museum, I'm like, yes, there is. 2, is it in Pasadena? I'm like, no, that's the Pasadena, that's the Pacific Asian Museum. Or are you in Little Tokyo? I'm like, no, that's the Japanese American Museum. And so I said, we're actually in downtown Los Angeles, across the street from Union Station, right? The building we're in is 1890, and this building is important because it's one of the last main buildings of historic Chinatown. There's a history I'm going to get to in a bit, right? So as a museum, our work is to share the experiences of the Chinese Americans in Los Angeles and beyond, right? I'm going to go through this really quickly. And as you walk into the exhibit, you will see the timeline of Chinese American history, right? If you're not familiar with the Chinese American history or only been introduced to the surface level through classroom, that is okay. This museum exists today because we are here to really preserve the history, but also share this history for those who are not familiar with this history, right? We get about 22,000 visitors a year, and for majority of them, they're not familiar with the Chinese American history, or even understanding the fact that where we're at, that used to be Chinatown in Los Angeles, right? And the Chinese began to come to the United States during the Gold Rush in 1848. In 1851, you have about 3,000 Chinese coming to the United States. In 1852, 20,000 Chinese came out to the United States in search of gold. And out of the 20,000, only 17 were women, right? And when we think about the miners who are coming, the people who are working here, right? The initial conversation about coming to America was never to say, hey, I'm coming here, I'm migrating here to stay and support and live here. It's this concept of, I come to California, I find gold, make it rich, and return back to China, right? So there's aspects of having families stay in China while you migrate over here to work and support your family, right? Other aspects is the fact that if you were a female, a woman working, you're not able to do manual labor, right? Men would work hard to do manual labor. So there's aspects of this Chinese American identity did not exist. It was always I'm Chinese, living in America, trying to support my families back home, hopefully be able to return back home, right? And as more and more Chinese came into the United States on search for other opportunities, you have folks who are working in the agriculture businesses, in restaurants, in the fishing industry, light industry, the laundry business. As we talk about, a lot of men were coming into California, right? But when we think about the laundry business, historically, the gender roles, right? Women were the ones who were perceived to do laundry, right? Laundry was perceived to be women's work. So there were a lot of men in California specifically who didn't want to do laundry. So the Chinese, they chose the laundry business because there was no competition, right? There was anybody who would say, you know what, I'm not gonna, you're taking away my jobs or whatnot. They were choosing jobs that no one else wanted to do, right? And laundry was one of them. But once they monopolized the laundry business, then it became an issue with the large society. Saying like, hey, there's too many Chinese taking away our jobs of doing laundry, right? And we hear that time and time again with different sectors, right? What certain ethnic group is taking jobs away from other folks, right? And then when you ask, are people willing to take those jobs? And you kind of hear crickets, right? And the Chinese, did laundry businesses, they did other business, other occupations as well, including the construction of the railroad, right? The first transcontinental railroad. California became a state in 1851. This is now an opportunity to connect the East Coast and West Coast together with a railroad, right? So they constructed 2 ways, in San Francisco going east and in Nebraska going west, right? And then met in Palm Beach Point, Utah, which is called the Golden Spike. This photograph you see here is a very important photograph because this is where the East, now goods and people are able to travel coast to coast, right? And this is this is where they celebrated the completion of this railroad called the Golden Spike. 15,000 to 20,000 Chinese work on the railroad. But you look at this photograph you see here, commonly in textbooks, you're not gonna see any Chinese faces at all, right? So even though the majority of the Chinese worked on the railroad, they're not given the credit to work on the railroad, right? And now slowly, in the last 20, 30 years, you have folks advocating to make sure Chinese American history is included in the textbooks, right? Specifically in California, right, where more Chinese American, Asian American history are included in textbooks, but not nationally, right? So all the states are not sharing this particular history, even though this infrastructure was very key to American society, right? But as more Chinese were coming here, finding work, right, they were also faced with a lot of discrimination and racism, right? So as I mentioned before, a lot of men were coming into the United States historically. I do apologize, I have the phone ringing. And not to settle, come here to support find work and return back home. But as more and more Chinese were coming here working for employment, there's this aspect of wanting to settle, right? And the Page Law was passed in 1875 that prevented Chinese or Asian women from entering the United States, right? So if you were perceived to be a prostitute, you are not allowed to come into the United States, right? But how do you prove that you're not a prostitute, right? And the key thing with that is, if you don't have Asian women in the United States, you don't have families settled in the United States. You can't create families in the United States. You can't sustain roots in the United States, right? So the law was discriminatory in terms of having Asians or Chinese specifically create families and make a living here and be calling America home, right? And then you have there is currently the Workman Party basically saying the Chinese must go, basically deport Chinese. We do not want Chinese in the United States anymore, right? And it got really heated. By 1882, the United States passed the Chinese Exclusion Act that's supposed to last for only 10 years, right? In 1888, a law was passed, the Scott Act, that basically says that if you are Chinese and you to leave the United States, you're not welcome back here, regardless if you were legally able to stay in the United States. And in 1892, if you were Chinese citizen in the United States legally, you have to have certificate to prove that you're in the United States legally. And if you didn't have the certificate, you were either deported or you were subject to slavery labor, right? So these, and then in 1902, it got extended indefinite to repeal in 1943. So by 1882 to 1943, Chinese exclusion prevented Chinese laborers and a lot of Chinese from entering the United States, right? So in 2012, you have Congress member Judy Chu, who passed a resolution in the House to of regret of the passing the China Exclusion Act, right? And that's very key because now you have this, our legislation basically saying that they're reflecting upon history and looking at ways to now provide regret for that aspect of it. And you also, in this time, as legislation was passed against anti-Asian, right? You also have a lot of anti-Asian violence as well, specifically anti-Chinese violence, right? In Los Angeles, right? So I was talking about nationally. What does it mean for Los Angeles, right? An exhibit here called Origins talks about the history of Chinese living in Los Angeles, specifically where the Chinese Americans is at. In 1850, Chinese came to Los Angeles, right? And more Chinese started to grow. By the 1870s, you have about 200 Chinese living in Los Angeles, creating restaurants, opening businesses, they're merchants, they're providing doctors and whatnot. And with the anti-Chinese sentiment that spread in California and throughout the United States, you have the Chinese massacre of 1871, right? These were it started with two Tongs who were fighting over a Chinese woman who perceived to be a prostitute. And during this gun battle, they both were drawing guns. The two Tongs were drawing guns, and during the gun battle, a person, I believe a sheriff, walked in to try to stop theirs from happening. And in the meantime, the sheriff got shot, right? So the news spread throughout Los Angeles. The news didn't say this sheriff got shot by two Tongs. It says the Chinese were now killing whites, right? So 500 Los Angelinos came into Chinatown and lynched and killed 74 men, right? Chinese whites, 18 people altogether, right? And this is considered the worst lynching that happened west of the Mississippi, right? So these are history that are often not talked about, right? Because when this event happened, the news spread throughout the United States. People knew about it, like in New York and whatnot, right? And LA realizes that there's such a negative portrayal of Los Angeles due to this heroic act that they start to clean themselves up, right? And it's PR. They clean themselves up, trying to make LA as a really great place, but in the meantime of cleaning it up, it also caused a erasure of history, right? If we did not talk about it, if we did not erase this history, then we could move on and elsewhere, right? And we learn nowadays that it's problematic when history is erased, right? We could remember it, we could reflect on it, we could learn from it, but we should not erase it. Right?
Because it repeats itself.
Yes, I will get to that soon. That the Chinese were coming to the United States in different communities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, right? They weren't going to places where they said, I'm going to create this community, right? They were forced into these ethnic ghettos, right? So the Chinese who came to Los Angeles, they didn't choose to stay in this location because of discriminatory practice over housing, right? They were forced to live in concentrations of Chinese, regardless of your wealth, right? So when the city of Los Angeles decided to construct a union station, there are multiple places that they could choose, right? Ultimately, the city decided to construct it on the Chinatown as we, the Chinatown that was once there, right? Mainly, one was central access to the city. Two was the fact that politically, Chinese didn't have a voice. A lot of them didn't have voting rights. They weren't, naturalized. Because of Chinese exclusion, they could not be naturalized as well. So there weren't a lot of voting. So they didn't have a voice. So the site was chosen, and the Chinese were forced to leave this location and create the Chinatown as we know today. A portion of Chinatown was left remaining, and with the construction of the 1-1 freeway, the rest of historic Chinatown was demolished. So the museum, the building that we're in, the Gardner building, is one of the last remaining buildings of that time. So we're here to reclaim a history in Los Angeles that was once forgotten. Because for those who live in Los Angeles, for those who visited Chinatown as we know today, we always assume that that Chinatown was the first Chinatown in Los Angeles, right? Where the original Chinese settled, right? But that was created in the 1930s, right? So when the Chinese came in the 1850s, there's 80 years of history that was forgotten just because the construction of the Union Station and the construction of the 1-1 freeway. Right. Our exhibit also talks about the Chinatown that's known today is very key because this Chinatown was a space where the community got together and decided to create a community on their own. What they wanted to do, what they wanted to look like, creating it for themselves. And they created a tourist attraction, right? When I was growing up, when I went to college, I was a sociology major, right? So we always talk about cultural tourism and the problems of cultural tourism, right? And Chinatown was put into that kind of light where you market and you sell culture, right? You don't celebrate it in an authentic way. It's marketed as a commodity for people to buy, right? But we also have to understand that in the 1930s and 40s, what opportunities the Chinese have, right? And one of the opportunities that they could afford to have is being merchants, right? To support businesses and whatnot. So it was created in a way as a tourist attraction, but it was a necessity to support the families, the livelihoods, right, and whatnot. And and the questions that the students always ask is, who designed Chinatown? Did we have Chinese architects design Chinatown? Did we should, right? But no, there's two white individuals that constructed Chinatown. And you go, why didn't they hire Chinese? Because Chinese couldn't have access to school to become architects. There weren't any Chinese architects back in the day. You know what I mean? So we have to put in the context of history and the opportunities that Chinese had, or Asian Americans had, versus what they were giving to them, right? As Chinese started to develop families here and have kids here, a lot of the kids wanted to be part of a larger American society, right? And you hear things like basketball clubs, tennis clubs, and whatnot. And some of these clubs do not allow Asians to participate, so they create their own. So we celebrate the Meiwa Drum Corps, where it's all Chinese American women drum corps, right? In the exhibition. Then we also introduced a small history of Monterey Park. Monterey Park, that's where I was born and raised, right? It was different than the ways that the other Chinese communities in Los Angeles was constructed, right? Because the Chinese American communities historically was constructed because they were from the poor, coming from the poor working class, right? Those who coming to the United States to work, support their families because their families are facing famine back home, right? And Monterey Park was unique because there was a lot of uncertainties that was happening in Asia at the time. Taiwan lost a seat in the UN, Hong Kong eventually returned back to China, and there is this need to say there are political things happening in Asia that I cannot control, so I need to leave this area. So I'm going to choose to live in the United States. But where in the United States, right? So these are folks who have wealth and privilege who is able to leave countries. They weren't forced out, they were able to leave, right? And it shows Monterey Park, not because Monterey Park was a great community, which it is, I was born there, but it was because it was marketed as the Chinese Beverly Hills. Frederick Shea, a real estate agent who lives in Monterey Park, bought newspapers throughout Asia and basically if you want to come to the United States, move to Monterey Park, it's the Asian Beverly Hills or the Chinese Beverly Hills, right? So, and again, you want to move there because it's privilege, right? You want to live in a privileged site. And there's a marketing pamphlet that we see here, actually right over here, that started to market these tract homes, right? And on the front cover it says the Asian Beverly Hills, and when you open it, it says that the peaks on Brightwood remind you of Victoria Peaks in Hong Kong, right? So again, it's selling to a different community, right? Because again, if you are wealthy, you don't want to live in Chinatown, right? And at this time, Chinatown demographic was changing because you have a lot of Southeast Asians moving to Chinatown. My family is actually, I was born in Monterey Park, but my family first settled in Los Angeles, went to Chinatown, right? Where we came here from Vietnam in 1970s, 1979, right? So the transition from like a Chinese community into like a Chinese Vietnamese community, right? A lot of Vietnamese there, a lot of Cambodians there, right? So this changing demographics, these folks here, who are wealthier didn't want to live in those communities. They wanted to create their own community, right? But Monterey Park was a suburban bedroom community. You have this influx of Chinese immigrants coming in who were wealthy, who were able to create stores and businesses to support their own community, right? And long-term residents felt that the community was changing really quickly, and they're trying to pass legislative laws to prevent the growth of the Chinese community in Monterey Park, right? You have the English only movement happening in Monterey Park. You have bilingual signage movements, where basically saying that if you open a store and you have Chinese characters or Chinese names, you have to put in English as well, right? You have aspects of slow growth, where the community had to approve large developments that may service the Chinese community, right? So there were a lot of big issues that impacting this community in Monterey Park. And keep in mind that you have folks who are moving into Monterey Park who didn't have voting rights, right? So you have individuals who lived there like Judy Chu, Mike Ng, who were residents of Monterey Park, who created coalitions, the multi-ethnic coalitions to fight against these type of racist legislation, right? A coalition for harmony in Monterey Park. And they advocated for understanding diversity and accepting diversity and celebrating diversity in Monterey Park, right? So that's very key to the shaping of Monterey Park, right? So, it's really interesting because I was a child, right? I was going to elementary school, and my parents were constantly working, right? So what's important at the time is, even though all this is going on and I may not know, I know that people were advocating on my behalf, my family's behalf, right? So my parents may not have been able to do the work, but there are community members that are out there to speak on their behalf, to make sure that they know their rights and they're able to sustain their livelihoods in Monterey Park without barriers and obstacles, right? So why are these stories important, right? Why is this Chinese American history important? As I mentioned, I was born in Monterey Park. I have folks advocating on my behalf, but most importantly, we have to reflect on and understand the challenges our community face and stand up for us and have a voice, and voice our concerns. We use history as a way to learn from our past, right? If we erase history, we won't know what happened and we won't see any red flags that were coming, right? So what does that mean? So the pandemic happened, right? You have people calling it the Kung Flu virus, right? You have people calling it some other fun nicknames, right? And you have the media saying, hey, that's all right, that's just a cute nickname, it's not a problem, right? And then what we see this increase in anti-Asian hate, right? We know historically, dangerous rhetoric can lead to dangerous consequences, right? Chinese must go led to Chinese Exclusion Act, led to anti-Chinese violence. China flu, Kung flu, cute nicknames, quote unquote, right? Led to this increase of anti-Asian violence. And I specifically chose LA County, right? Because when we think of LA County, we have a large Asian American community here. We don't think that these aspects will impact this community because LA is very diverse. We celebrate our diversity, right? But even with that, we see this increase of crime, right? And even we see the result of this crime now as our seniors are even still today are fearful of leaving their homes, right? Fearful of taking the bus, taking public transit, right? And these are repercussions that we're still dealing with today, right? As a museum, we reflect on history. We host a commemoration of 1871 every year to remember the lives that were lost, but also to think about ways to not have it repeated. What can we learn from the Chinese massacre of 1871, right? What can we learn from the killing of Vincent Chin in 1980, right? When his murder galvanized the Asian American community, right? And now we are also in the midst of creating a unity garden at the Chinese American footprint here to honor the tragic lives that were lost in Los Angeles due to different massacres. We also are in the midst of expanding our exhibition spaces as well, so we're in the midst of an expansion project, right? But the stories that we share here today is not a story of heartaches. It's not, I'm talking about challenges that a community face. But what we have to learn from this is how do we overcome these challenges, right? We're here today because our community overcame these challenges, right? We're here today because we are resilient, right? We are able to unite and come together and have the voice, and we honor and remember those that came before us. You know, we can follow in the footsteps, we can learn how to unite, and we can learn ways to overcome so we can be a stronger, more united community, right? And we also celebrate Chinese American culture through our Spring Festival and Lantern Festival, right? We're able to now celebrate because the work that was done historically allow us now to really openly share our identity freely. You know, there's still challenges that we're facing, but we're more free to do so. And it's because of those who were able to advocate on our behalf in the past, right? Now I want to talk about Anime Wong, right? It's an exhibit here. Again, our work is talking about overcoming resilience. She is the first Chinese American female actress, right? And what's really interesting about her story is the fact that, you know, she was born in Los Angeles. There's a lot of production happening in Chinatown in Los Angeles. And she knew she always wanted to be a movie star. She would skip school, she would go into the production, she kind of watch production, she goes and she practices what she kind of learns and watch. And then one day, a director asked her to be an extra, right? And then asked her to be in more of a show, in more of the movies. So she became this movie star. And people were really intrigued by her. But because of the anti-Asian hate that was going on, the anti-views of Chinese going on, her roles were subjugated towards either being a dragon lady that we often hear, or you know, being a prostitute, right? And she didn't like this type of roles. She goes, America has always given me roles that subjugates me to being either weak or really evil, right? So she goes, I'm gonna leave the United States. I'm gonna go to Europe now and make it big there. And she did. She makes it big in London. You know, she went to France and she did productions there. And she became this international movie star. And when she comes back to the United States, now she has the privilege, right, as this international movie star. And she partners with Paramount to make a film. The first film they made flopped. The second film she made, Daughter of Shanghai, went really well. And that was very key with that movie because she decided that as a lead actor, I'm gonna have my counterpart be Asian, the person who dies in the movie would not be Asian, right? So she's trying to provide her community in a more positive light, right? So this is some photographs of the exhibition. And then what I'm going to be playing next is a trailer that we have in their film. It's about 15 minutes long. Feel free to kind of flow around. But these are small snippets of her film throughout her lifetime. So I want to thank you all for having me here today. And I really hope that you have a chance to visit the Chinese American Museum. And we're free to the public.
I'm very happy to hear from you. Will you come right over?
I think it's more advised that you came here. I think in the penthouse at the Hollingsworth Hotel.
All right, I'll be there within the hour.
Thank you.
Leave us okay. China. Not even a million deaths could crush the soul of China. For the soul of China is eternal. When I die, a million will take my place, and nothing can stop them. Neither hunger, nor torture, nor the firing squad. For the armies of decency and liberty are on the march. For China's destiny is victory. It will live because human freedom will not perish. Out of the ashes of ruin and old hatreds, the force of peace will prevail until the world is again clean and good.
Two different stories for your own lips. One, equally strange, Cousin Jim.